Hadla hadla ho! It's your boy Nate. I read books because reading is sexy, and if you're not reading, you're not sexy. But today, we've got some watches to talk about. Everything I watched in July. I watched 40 movies, which if you do the math, there's only like, what, 30, 31 days in July? That means I watched like 2 movies in a day, on some days. And yes, that is true. I love doing that. Love doing a double feature. I guess a honorable mention is I double featured The Boy and the Heron as well as Akira Kurosawa's Dreams, which go hand in hand, I think. Both fantastic at looking at what dreams can do, how they speak to our reality, and both incredibly imaginative. Miyazaki, we all know where his brain's at. And Kurosawa, who I've watched 1 or 2 of his films, and they're so grounded. So when I saw this, I thought it was so beautiful and lush, the colors that he added. And also, Martin Scorsese as Van Gogh. Wild. Wild. Yeah, I'm not going to give you the full list of the 40 movies, but if you're interested, I do have a letterbox. Links downstairs. Go have a look-see. But I'm just going to choose my top 10 that I watched in July. So starting at number 10, I watched Too Late for Tears out of 1949. This is a film noir, and I think should be put into the classics. When I studied film in high school, there was, the General, Sunset Boulevard, Maltese Falcon, all these classic film noirs. But this one is really interesting because the femme fatale in it is the star of the show. I feel like most times we're focused on the man, and the femme fatale just acts as a secondary character to really move plot. But the female lead here is incredible. Okay, Elizabeth Scott, incredible. The way she, I don't want to spoil it, but the way she does something to a man and not in the best light and still has her hairdo, so good. So good. I love this film noir a lot because it's so female focused and female driven, and it's really the power of her femininity that allows her to get away with so many things and get what she wants. But does she really get what she wants in the end? I think it's just beautifully done. Next up at number 9, I have 1 Hour Photo from 2002. And this is such a strange film to talk about because I feel like somewhere in the early 2000s, there was this middle America suburbia laxness, this sort of sensitivity to the pale way we look at life. This looks at LA in such a calm light. Somewhat movie related, I'm reading Shop Girl by Steve Martin with Yena from Modern Ajma, if you read out there. And this also has that same tone, and this was written in 2000. And it's this bleakness, this just like laissez-faire boredom to it that had a chokehold on LA, and there's no way else to describe it, but it's sort of the kind of heat that you feel when you're at the height of the afternoon and all you want to do is just not think, nap. This film sort of holds that in that, like, in an Andreas Gursky kind of way. He has this photo of like the 99-cent store with like endless aisles of American products, but it's sort of this like endlessness that becomes an infinity that is too much to realize that there isn't really a timeline to it, that it's just this stagnant photo-esque stillness to everything. I hope that makes sense. Am I making sense, or is that a bunch of hoo-ha? But anyway, it's about a man who works at a 1 Hour Photo booth at like a Walmart, and he obsesses over a family to the point where he feels like he's part of the family. So there's this intense loneliness to it, starring Robin Williams, who takes on this very, very serious role. And it's so stark in contrast to who we know him as someone who's so funny and comedic. Here you really get to see him as an actor, a serious actor, and how he can really play it. And you start to feel bad for him as the movie progresses. And we realize that the family is falling apart, and he tries to save it in his own way. and I'll leave it at that. But it's just gorgeously shot. Just has that very muted LA tone to it that is just so special within itself. I did want to mention that the movie was directed by Mark Romanek, who is actually more known for his music videos. Like, he did Lemonade, which is crazy. But the only other film he like really shot is Never Let Me Go. There is another film, 1985, which I've not seen or heard about, but it looks like it has some mixed reviews. At number 8, I have Black Christmas from 1974. I think this sits up high with The Texas Chainsaw Massacre in terms of the classic slasher films. This one is interesting because you have the contrast of horror and Christmas, a holiday in which you're supposed to enjoy, but nothing is quite enjoyable when everyone around you is dropping dead like flies, and you want to know who. Who is it? Who is it? Yeah, I'll leave it there, because the end, I think, will make you angry, but in the way that I think it was actually speaking to the ailments at the time, you know, of the Manson murders and sort of the senseless violence that was going on in America at the time, that really brought out this stronger fear, not from the heart of America, but from the very walls of your own home, your own suburban home. I just love the way this looks with all the Christmas cheer and lights, and just the very first 15 minutes, I think, also just works as a great horror short film, where the final shot within the first 15 minutes, the first killing, is a woman in a rocking chair wrapped entirely in plastic, in duct tape, with her mouth agape, eyes wide, dead, and just rocking in the chair. And the shot zooms out from a window, and she's just there, rocking in the window. It's chilling. At number 7, I have The Last Horror Film from 1982. I want to say that there was this like weird time in between the 70s and 80s where humor was really strange. Not dark humor entirely, but just odd, like oddball humor. I want to say it's part of New Hollywood, just like this awkward puberty that was occurring in terms of American cinema. And this is about a loser cab driver in New York who has a dream of making his own film. And so he goes to the Cannes Film Festival, surrounded by film, obsessed by it, trying to get this porn star to film in one of his films. And it's shot in this mockumentary kind of way, and is such a love letter to film as it tracks all the films that showed at Cannes in 1982. So it has this very strong documentary feel because it's documenting that time while also being a film in itself. So it's kind of meta in a way, and horror-esque, and thriller too, because it's also about a murder, a serial killer who's killing all these people surrounding this one porn star. And it's just so, so beautiful, just like the film grain on the neon lights of Cannes at the time in the 80s. Some of the best nightclub scenes I've seen, just the glitz and glamour of it all. It's not shot very well, which adds to sort of the avant-garde guerrilla filmmaking that seemed to occur. I think it's such a special, underrated love letter to what cinema is and what cinema can be. Yeah, and I just sort of love like these oddball films that are sort of like the ugly children of cinema, if you will, hidden away, tucked away from time. And it's crazy that like a film like this exists. It's very pulpy, sexploitation a bit, but never veering like totally into it. There's just touches of it. So it's a lot in one film. At number 6, I have The Boy and the Heron by Miyazaki. Okay, I thought I didn't add this in the list, but it is. It's in the list. Yeah, I thought it was fab. Finally, I watched it. It was actually released in Korea, but without like English subtitles, and my Korean's not that great. So I'm glad I waited it out, because if I saw it in the theater, which would have been such a gem, because I would love to see, a newly released Miyazaki film, The Time of Culture. I had to wait for stream. And this was wonderful. It is the antithesis, I think, to... Okay, I'm gonna try and find the title right, because I think I kept saying it wrong. Is it The Wind Rises? The Wind Also Rises. Because I keep confusing it with that Hemingway book that has nothing to do with wind. It's like The Sun Also Rises. The Wind Rises. Is it just The Wind Rises? The wind is just rising. It's just rising, oh. Okay, it is just The Wind Rises. Okay, alright. Yes, I think this is the antithesis to The Wind Rises, where The Wind Rises, I feel, is memoir in a sense. There aren't any fantastical elements, though. There was a realism I think Miyazaki wanted to paint in, given that I think when you look at the rest of his films, there's this strong sense of the imagination. That was supposedly his last film, and then he put this out, you know, under our noses. I think just admits a lot to the testament of his work. I think this film is more about how he can't admit to death, that he can't finalize his life. Finalizing his life means finalizing his work, and I don't know if he's entirely happy with all that he's created. I think there's still more in him that he wants to create because, you know, his son can't draw, and two, his son can't tell a goddamn story, so there isn't really a legacy to leave, to sort of carry over into the future generations of animators when we look at Ghibli's films. So yeah, I thought this was fantastical, and I don't think it entirely holds up, but I think because it's such a personal film, and that's why I double featured it with Kurosawa's work, which is like an anthology of dreams that he had. And so it doesn't entirely make sense because it's all a dream. It's entering dream, realizing how dreams speak to the potentiality of who you want to be as an artist, and then coming to terms with that when we wake up and come back to our body, our wakeful body. Yeah, I thought it was just beautifully animated, felt very much like a long dream, and just magical, but also quite depressing. In terms of themes, it's one that isn't entirely conveyed in the way he wanted to convey it in, because it's so hard, I think, when you create art and you want to relay the entirety of what you mean to another person. And here you kind of see the limits. Miyazaki's desire for him to give you all that he dreams and all that he imagines, but you see the limits here. And I don't know, I think when you look at it like that, it's a very interesting film. At number 5, I have Klute, out of 1971. This was phenomenal. Phenomenal. Jane Fonda in the film. Oh my god. Amazing. With that wig, the bob wig. Incredible. There is just such a sense of wariness and anxiousness in the film. I felt so claustrophobic to the sense where I never felt safe in the entire film. Mostly because it's about a sex worker who is being watched, and she doesn't know who's watching her. Is it one of her clients? Someone from her past? Who is it? And then these murders happen and follow her. The blood is following her. But within the entire film, you're always vignetted by shadows, by night, by the unsafety of what is outside of your own home, to the point where you don't feel safe in your own home. Just the way that it's shot, just the sound design, especially at the beginning, it makes you fear eavesdropping and the peeping Tom. It just escalates to this like interesting sense of freedom, where freedom is the climax of the story, and the soundtrack to the climax is just so beautifully done. Jane Fonda is incredible in this film, such a great mix of emotions that she knows how to maintain, and it's wonderful. I feel like a lot more people need to watch this. It's overlooked, I think. Number 4, I have Chinatown, out of 1974. This is done by Roman Polanski, which I had no idea, and it's set in LA. I thought for the longest time it was like set in New York, and stars a young Jack Nicholson, who is at the top of his game here. Looks at the mysterious waterways of Los Angeles, where the water is going, and it becomes this really fun crime thriller drama that really lands focus on our female lead, whose name I've forgotten. Faye Dunaway. Oh my god, how did I forget that? So good. Just the way she purses her lips, the way she looks, the strength in her. She is that femme fatale. But also, there's such a range of emotions that run through her. Anger, sadness, the way she cries. And it's amazing how she holds herself up, but also explodes. She can do it all, and it's incredible. Definitely gives that sort of grimy, gothic look to LA, especially during a time that I feel like Joan Didion and Eve Babbitt wrote about LA in this way. So it just captures everything beautiful, wonderful, and lustrous about LA. Gorgeously shot. At number 3, I have Pret out of 1994. This is done by Robert Altman. And, oh, is it Robert? I just said a name, and I don't know if it's right. Also, if you can hear my stomach growling, I am so hungry. But it's only 10 a.m. Like, what's wrong with me? La 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 diary. See, the issue with watching too many movies, y'all. Okay, it is Robert Altman. I've been getting into a lot of Robert Altman films. Me saying that and only having watched Nashville. I also watched Nashville in July, but I like this one a lot more because it's just my culture. If anyone doesn't know, Altman in his filmography, which is huge, by the way, there was a moment where he really wanted to create this huge cast of characters, America as a giant open theater stage, if you will. And you really just follow these random characters, and there's a through line. It's not a strong through line. Sometimes it's quite weak. In Nashville, it's much stronger, where, yeah, you just bob heads with all of these different people, and it largely becomes what is America. For Pret-à-Porter, it's really about what is fashion and its relation to the world by way of a mysterious murder and doppelganger, which is a lot of fun. But this is my culture because it is at Paris Fashion Week in 1994, and I think it was such a lovely time to be alive, where you had designers like Issey Miyake, Comme des Garçons, Sonia Rykiel, Mugler, Jean-Paul Gaultier. Like, it's just an immense cast of all of these designers who make cameos in the film. So it's shot with this sort of guerrilla documentary style with shots of Paris Fashion Week, which is incredible. Like, it's documentary in a sense because it's capturing Paris Fashion Week in 94 while also containing a storyline with Sophia Loren, who looks incredible in it. And yeah, it reminds me actually a lot of like the way Kusk writes. And I've never realized that like this was achieved before. To me, when I first heard of Kusk not wanting to write characters anymore, I thought, oh, how interesting. And then I come to Altman's films and I'm like, you know what, this is so interesting too, because there isn't really a central character that we follow. We sort of just follow everyone, and everyone tells the story. Everyone tells a story. And perhaps it's multiple narratives, multiple stories that really drive a singular story, if it can, drives a singular story. And it's something that's so experimental in form, and I think works in Altman's regards. I don't think it works quite well here, given that the murder and following through the affairs, romantic, thrilling, don't really fall through. They fall quite flat, but it's still such an interesting film. And just the opening shot of Russia as the camera pans and then just swirls immensely to a Michel Legrand track just sings in me. Although there's these like computer generated banners of the names coming up to show the entire cast during the camera spin, but I don't think it looks good. They should have just had the names there. Hated the computer generated stuff, but I don't think this is a film most people will like. It's kind of a drag to go through. On Letterboxd, I rated it 5 stars because it's very much my culture. It's experimental in how maybe I want to create my own stories. And yeah, I'm still thinking about Kusk's question. It's also Hetty's question that like, I just want to tell the story. There doesn't need to be characters. I just want to tell it the way that it is. I'm butchering that from Alphabetical Diaries, but it's very much that. I think it's so experimental, yet it's very much the culture for me. And yeah, I feel like one of the best films about fashion, when we think of movies about the fashion world, feels like a documentary. And then at times it is a film. So I think most people would be bored by this, but I think if there's one Altman film you have to watch, it's probably Nashville. A lot more people would appreciate that than Pret-à-Porter. At number 2, I have Mickey 1 out of 1965. This is so interesting in that it's Nouvelle Vague, but in America, there are a shit ton of crossfades in here. Like, who is this? Who made this? Arthur Penn. Arthur Penn really went ham on all those crossfades. They like make up a good half of the film. But this is about a comic who is on the run from the mob. And it's really fun because you have a young Warren Beatty who tests out all these materials in front of crowds, and there's these like great zingers, and it's really fun the way he sort of plays a cheap James Dean with the hair and just like the furrowed brows and the forehead, shot in gorgeous black and white. You really get a sense that there's a lot of love in the way that this is filmed and the way that it moves. It has a very frenetic energy to it. It really is about a man wanting to work in the smallest clubs with the lowest pay and creating your art in those spaces and not ever wanting once to go into the spotlight. And there's this humbleness to it where it makes me think about, like, you know, I don't ever want to become a giant creator. I don't want to reach that height of fame. It's really daunting, but like I just appreciate small knit communities. I'm a small business. I'm grassroots. On a artistic level, this really speaks to me as an artist, but also, yeah, it's just another love letter to cinema. Very bombastic. The soundtrack is done by Stan Getz, who, if anyone didn't know, is a really big player in the bossa nova scene at the time. And yeah, just such a really, you know, brass strings sound that really drives the film as well. It might make it to my film canon because it's a film that I think I could rewatch. Okay, last film at number 1 that I want to talk about is Looking for Mr. Goodbar from 1977. Y'all, I think this film has just been buried under culture. A teacher of deaf children by day and a good time girl by night, as Letterboxd says. But it's played by Diane Keaton, who does a fabulous job of creating a lot of sentimentality and sensitivity to her character. That would be really tough to play someone who is so loving during the day, but is also a woman who wants to explore her sexual freedom by night. And she does this by way of coming out of much childhood trauma and body image issues after dealing with surgery of scoliosis as a small child. Not Diane Keaton herself in the film. Just shot in this like grimy, slummy New York with roaches. There's a good deal of roaches in this film. What I feel like people mistook as a sex negative film, if you're a prude, it's really about finding your own self, being comfortable in your own body through sexual exploration. And this is just done so beautifully by Diane Keaton, because she maintains the ups and downs of coming into your own body and feeling comfortable with it through the many men that she meets, one of which is a young Richard Gere. And this scene is incredible, y'all, because it's Diane Keaton going into a dive bar, ordering a glass of red wine, reading The Godfather. Like, that is me. That is me. It's a moment in the film like I will never be able to shake from me because it is entirely me. Except I wish, you know, a hunky Richard Gere would come up to me and pickpocket from my bag. But the film is also told in these really strange cuts. You enter moments of like hypothetical situations and sometimes dream sequences where you think it's part of Diane Keaton's reality, but it's very much not. And these mechanisms, I feel like, is used all the time in books, but in the film, it's used in a way where you sort of snap out of it and you realize, oh, this is not real. This is not happening for her, but it drives the film still in such a strange, textured kind of way. And then the film ends quite brutally. One that still haunts me. This film stayed with me for like 2 or 3 days because I could not shake off the end of the film. The very image, the way that it's just edited, shot, and put together, it left me in quite a shock. And this is the one time where I was like, I'm a big person who watches a movie before they go to work. So this just put me in such a weird place and a weird time of day. And it didn't help also that my next door neighbor was having sex, going at it, going ham. They're like literally like head in the headboard kind of thing. And I heard it all. And I just sat there having watched this film about sexual freedom that doesn't end very well. And I'm just like, well, there's the day. We gotta go do it. Gotta do the day like this. Yeah, it's a hard film to talk about because it's not something that one should bring in conversations, you know, at the grill party or church service. It's one that you kind of just want to talk about with a very close friend and be like, yo, this is crazy. Did you watch this? I like don't know how to feel about it. It's a lot to process, that kind of thing. That's why it makes one of my top watches for July, and definitely something I'll revisit because, yeah, there's just a ton of interesting moments, techniques in terms of the dream sequences and hypothetical situations that I think could be learned from. And also, the brutal end and the way that that's edited is really, really striking. That's everything I watched in July. Let me know what you watched. What was your favorite film of July? Let a boy know. If you're a reader, I'm a Blackwell's affiliate. So if you like books, please use my affiliate link downstairs for all your bookish needs. And also, if anyone's forgotten, I am a novelist, and my current novella, Adolescence Leaves, is out. You can find that also downstairs. It tracks memory, loss, and trauma in between Los Angeles and Tokyo. All right, everyone, thanks for being here. And as always, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.